Hello everybody and welcome to my erratic blog. I am Claire Dorweiler and right now I want to tell you something about visuals to a 3D audio play. So, audio plays are dramatized stories which are told in a purely acoustical way normally. So voices, music and sound effects actually trigger our imaginations. So 3D audio plays actually work without visuals and create visuals in our minds. So what's the point of visuals to a 3D audio play? I will tell you more. So I actually want to tell you about the visuals to Die drei Fragezeichen und die schwarze Katze, which is a 3D audio play, which was created for spatial sound mostly. And it's about 3 teenage investigators who call themselves the 3 question marks, so die drei Fragezeichen. And in this case, they treat a theft and a case of fire raising on a small compound of a circus. And die drei Fragezeichen is pretty well known in Germany, so almost everybody knows the audio plays from Drei Fragezeichen. It started in 1979 and is created till today with actually the same speakers still, which still speak the teenage boys, so they are grown up right now. And 3 episodes were released in 3D audio in 2014 by Sony Music and Hörraum Entertainment and played in many planetariums in Germany. And the audience loved it, but since planetariums also offer the opportunity of full dome, which means that you have actually around you a projection and also above you. So you sit in a dome, which is like a bowl, but really big over your head. And when they were hearing these audio plays, they also said, would also be nice to see something meanwhile. So this is when I entered the process to do visuals for this 3D audio play. But so also it was important that it still stays a 3D audio play and doesn't become a movie. So who am I actually? I am a media artist with focus on immersion. And I'm specialized in full dome productions and animation for full dome. So, and I also teach a full dome class here at the Mediencampus Dieburg. And also the Hochschule Darmstadt was involved into this project. I will tell you later more about that. So, for Die drei Fragezeichen und die schwarze Katze, me and my colleague Melissa Palacio animated and illustrated the visuals. And for the concept and the look of the visuals, we orientated on the existing cover. And also did a concept together with Markus Schäfer, Matthias Krause and Maike Müller from Sony Music and Hörraum. And the concept for the visuals was actually that they should immerse the audience even more into the whole story. So, I mean, it's already immersive as 3D audio play, but we also wanted to immerse them over the eyes so that you have kind of 2 layers in this show to get immersed into the story of these 3 investigators. And it was really important for us not to make it a movie, but really to let it be an audio play and create visuals which trigger in the same dynamics as in a 3D audio play. So that you perceive with the ears like the details of the story and also have visual triggers which also kind of trigger your imagination but not restrict your imagination. So we shouldn't tell the people what should be going on in their fantasy, but really also trigger their imagination. So just to maintain this fantastic impression. And since everybody has different images in mind of the characters and how they look like, we didn't illustrate the characters, but the characters were just there in the room overhearing through their voices. And to make the audience feel actually at the same place as the 3 investigators, the plan was just to show like the main locations. So we can switch to the next. For example, this is the circus, and the visuals are pretty abstract. So what you see are elements which can be a circus, but it's not one-to-one or captured with a 360-degree camera. And you have to imagine, if you have never visited a full dome, that what you see below in the picture will be in front of you. What is the center will be on top of you, and left and right stays the same, and what is in the upper part of the picture will be behind you. So behind would be right now behind me turning this wheel, which is actually part also of the circus. And like you sit there in the dome and this circus picture surrounds you, as the sounds do also. And yeah, what we did is to actually show these illustrations and yeah, pick up the dynamics from the audio play. For example, if the three investigators run to catch someone, also this image is just turning. So the animation is kept really simple, but the dynamic is also visually put in the room so that you also feel, okay, the space is also changing, not only from hearing, but also visually. And this was like the main part of the concept, to really pick up dramatic twists and turns and also make them experienceable over the eyes. So nevertheless, we wanted to have some visual identification with the characters. So for example, when they interact or when they fight or when they come together to discuss something, we also wanted to show this in the visuals, but we didn't want to show the characters. This is because, not to keep the people from imagining how they should look like. So in the next picture, you see that when we made the concept, we designed abstract forms which appear every time that characters interact. So for example, the white one is Justus, and the green one is Andy. And so these forms also interact when there are important fights or interactions. For example, here in this scene, they talk about what could it have, how the, let's say, sorry, how the cat is involved in the whole case. So they conclude, and their thoughts as words, they flow through the dome, and then they, form this image of a cat. So so the audience can also combine with the people in the story. And we did the animation so that first the creation of the audio play was there, and after we heard it in spatial sound, then we also designed the visuals to this. And in the audio production process, the Hochschule Darmstadt was also involved. There was a connected teaching research project led by Professor Sabine Breitsameter in the Soundscape and Environmental Media Lab of the Media Faculty here in Dieburg. And sound recordings for 3D audio were also made for a scene with a charoplane in this episode, which is in the next picture. And in this scene, actually, you get all the detailed information through the dialogues and the sounds. So what the three investigators are seeing in their ride and what they talk about in their ride in the charoplane, you don't see it in the visuals. This was important, so you get the details of the story actually through hearing. So the emphasis remains really on hearing. And to also pick up the ride on the carousel, we just designed this carousel, which is turning in the dome, and it's really big, and it's transforming the forms and also blinking. So you get a bit dizzy, and this dizzy feeling involves you much more into the situation which the three investigators are in. So actually, what this scene also shows, like for all the visuals to a 3D audio play, is that visuals which are matched with a 3D audio play actually get you also on a second level of immersion for a show. So this is what I wanted to tell you today, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Claire Dorweiler. Before we hop into our plenary discussion, we have some practical instructions that we want to give you. Valentina.
So, hi everybody, hi again. I hope you have been having a nice day today. I hope so. As you know, at 6:30 we have our 3D audio concert in the Kapuciner Kloster. For those who have still not been there, it's around 12 minutes walking from here. So we're leaving, the first group is leaving at 6:10 and the next group is leaving at 6:20. It's important that we split so that we, inside of the concert, you can have like a full 3D audio experience, because if you're too close or too crowded, you cannot actually enjoy it. So we're gonna split. So first come, first serve. First group lives with Niklas and second group lives with Anastasia. There you can see her. So we're gonna meet at the same meeting point as yesterday for the bus, that it's right outside of the eating room. So thank you very much.
Okay, so one more thing before our host Claude will start this plenary discussion. Yesterday we introduced a law to you that we don't want to have second and third rows. So feel free to join the circle a little bit more and come closer to this inner circle so it gets a little bit more cozy. And while you're doing that, I think Claude will introduce this plenary session.
Okay, everyone. Yeah, please move up. It'll be easier to have eye contact. There's some free chairs here, if you don't mind. Okay, this will work. So, I've been asked by Sabine to be facilitator of this session, where we're going to talk about the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology and its first 25 years. I'm sure it will have a long history after today. So what I'd like to do is just ask 3 or 4 people to speak briefly about some of the achievements of the organization. Some of you might not know what the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology is. We talked a little bit about it so far. We'll do that, and then we'd like to hear from you thoughts about the organization. And there's going to be a whole other session tomorrow looking at future directions. But I think some of you aren't going to be here tomorrow. How many won't be here tomorrow? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's quite a few of you. So I would invite you, if you have thoughts on the World Forum, to say them today so that they can be heard by those who are leading the organization. And hopefully you have thoughts on how the organization can continue to be relevant to everyone. Personally, I was quite, I would use the word destabilized by this session yesterday, I'll be honest with you. When we started talking about diversity and inclusion, it's a challenge for any world organization to reach out to all parts of the world, and I know that I'm myself in a very privileged situation to be able to be here. It's just something to keep in mind as how can we expand the circle of interest in acoustic ecology in all parts of the world. So when you speak, try to be brief. Sometimes extroverts talk a little bit too much, and the introverts don't talk so much. So if you're an introvert, do take the risk of of expressing your opinion, be it today or at the session tomorrow. We really want to hear from everyone. There's also some acknowledgements. You heard about Nigel Frayne that Hildy talked about. He was one of the presidents of the World Forum. There's also a man named Gary Farrington, who you probably have never met. I haven't. But from the very beginning of the World Forum, he was very active in the background with the website. And him and Peter Grant, who also did a lot of the administrative work, these people did this on a volunteer basis for years and years and years. So one of the reasons that we're here is the volunteer work of a small group of very dedicated people around the world. So I want to acknowledge, I probably forgot some people, but acknowledge that the contributions of everyone who has worked to get us here. You heard me speak on at the beginning about how excited I was in 1993 at Tuning of the World. And one of the reasons that this field is so exciting is that it's not only interdisciplinary, but it really is inclusive of many ways and methods and approaches to listening. And I think that's one of the great strengths. Even if it's so many different approaches, we all have that in common. And so that to this day remains, I think, makes it a very relevant organization. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll invite Hildegard Westerkamp, who's probably been involved in the movement for the longest amongst us here, to give some insights, a little bit on how the forum came about, but maybe some of the highlights of the organization and some of the things that she would like you to know about what it's done for the last 25 years, and maybe some thoughts going forward, though that's mostly for tomorrow. So, and then others who were at Tuning of the World and who are involved in the organization will speak, and then we'll open the floor. Okay? Is that all right, everyone? C'est bon?
So how many in the room here were at the 1993 conference in Banff? Okay, so about 5, 6. Yes, come close, come close. Yes. Oh yeah. Kathy, come here. You were there. The conference came about really because after the World Soundscape Project disbanded more or less in the mid-70s, we all sort of went our own way for the next almost 20 years. And ever so often the idea came about that we should really try to contact all the people that we had contacted as part of the research in the 70s, professionals in many disciplines, many architects, other scientists, other artists, composers, that we should contact them and see whether we can't get together again and find a way to link back to the work in the 70s and look at where we were at, just like in this conference, and see where we want to go. And I remember once just mentioning to Murray that really we should have a conference, and I at that time thought I would do it because I was still at Simon Fraser University at the time. And then I get a phone call very shortly after from Michael Sentry, who was at the time at the Banff Center, saying that Murray had told him that I wanted to do a conference. And and so luckily Michael said, we can do it here in Banff, which was wonderful for me because I wasn't a very good organizer. And so we had a meeting, preliminary meeting probably in 91. A bunch of us, Justin Winkler from Switzerland, who was very active at the time. And Claude, were you at that meeting? Not yet, no. No, in 1991. Anyway, so then it was pretty much the energy was there. And my suggestion at the time was that I would start a newsletter that would connect, would simply look at the mailing list that we had and send out the newsletter and announce this plan for a conference. And the response was remarkable. It was a very small 6-page newsletter that we sent out by mail, and there was huge enthusiasm. And so then it kind of catapulted ahead, and a conference was planned, and very much close to the final conference, Claude kind of jumped in because Michael Sentry jumped out, I think. And there was a new organizer, and Claude came in and was very active in the conference itself. And we were having every morning meetings in Banff like this, trying to kind of see what do we want to do, what kind of plan do we have. And by the end of it, after 5 days, 5 meetings, we established the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology, WFAE. And it was August 13, 1993. And as soon as that happened, there was a knock on the window out there. And we all looked out, and there was one of the residents from Banff, the local elk, that had knocked on the window with his antlers, which was a wonderful, magical moment. And we said, yes, this is right. Okay, that was just a very long anecdote. then we all disbanded, and basically the organization came to Vancouver into my house. Peter granted myself into our house, and we tried to create a way to stay an organization and try to communicate. And the newsletter kept on going like that, and there was no email at the time. It was mostly fax or mail. And it was a little bit difficult to keep everybody together, but we kept going. And there was a conference in France at one point where we all gathered at Royaumont, organized by Ray Gallen and Pierre Marieton. And that was a very good occasion that we could partially re-meet. The really big highlight was a conference in 1998 in Stockholm, which was organized by Henrik Carlsson at the Royal Academy of Music and Royal Swedish Academy of Music. And there were many of us together, and that included Nigel Frayne, who had really just entered into the scene about a year earlier, and he had a vision for the World Forum that was quite different from what we had up to now. Now we had a bunch of individuals trying to communicate, and Nigel's vision was, why don't we establish affiliates in the local places where the energy exists? And so in Canada, Claude was very active in establishing the Canadian, that was already there, wasn't it? The Canadian Association for Sound Ecology. And then we have had a German-speaking organization, Forum Klanglandschaft, an English organization, Finnish organization, a Japanese, very important Japanese one of the first ones, organization, an Australian, what else? Was that it? Like we had about 8 or 9 affiliates. So from then on, there were these pockets of energy in the mostly European, North American, Australian world. Nowhere else. We didn't have anybody in Africa or Asia. That just has not happened yet. That connection. Japan, for sure. That was a very, very, very important one, and one of the older ones. And wherever the pockets of energy were, we had conferences. And from 1998 on, we had conferences in all these places, and they maintained and increased the energy in the organization. At one point, it was decided in Vancouver that rather than doing a letter, let's expand it to a soundscape journal. So I and a team of people edited that journal until I can't remember the exact. Yeah, but there was a point at which it was too much for me and alone, and so I suggested that the individual affiliates would begin to edit journals, and I would still be overseeing it. But and that continued then on, which was very nice because that meant that the affiliates were more engaged with the organization. So what you need to understand is that there's not such a thing as the WFAE and the affiliates. The affiliates are the WFAE. They make up the WFAE. So the energy comes from all these individual pockets in the world. Until 2012, Nigel Frayne was president until 2012, and Eric then became president, and I also withdrew from the activities in 2012. In fact, here we started the transition into new organization. So maybe I should hand it over to you to talk a bit more about from then on.
Yeah, we'll have Eric speak and then a few more thoughts. And because we have to finish at 6, we want to make sure we get your thoughts as well.
So I was here in 2012. We met. The WFAE has a board that consists of the representatives of each affiliate organization, and they're voting members who decide what the WFAE is going to do, and plus an executive committee. I'm a part of that, and that's a non-voting body, but one that takes care of more day-to-day operations like keeping the website going and so forth. I won't bore you with the administrative side of all of that, but in 2012, Phyllis Johnson became the editor-in-chief of, we entertained the idea of inviting her. It was decided, and it was Helmi's idea. Helmi is part of our Finnish affiliate, and she suggested we create that role of editor-in-chief for the journal. And and so several months after the conference and that conversation, she became the editor-in-chief. And now Leah Barclay is the editor-in-chief of Soundscape. Then I became president. I think I addressed the conference as president, and Nigel handed that role over to me. And so I've been serving as the president of the WFAE since then. What else should I mention? Anything in particular? Oh yeah, that was another transition. We were realizing the journal had always been, and that was part of the conversation, thank you, that we were having back then. It was about how to make it financially sustainable. That is, the journal had been produced in print and mailed out to each member of the WFAE. So members were through mostly the affiliates and a tiny number of individual members as well. And so the cost of printing and mailing out the journal was becoming cost prohibitive and also labor intensive. So for a totally volunteer-run organization, it was just becoming too taxing on our capacity. So we had to find a solution. We decided it would be a digital journal. And so at this time, it's the journal is still produced. It's still produced by different affiliate groups, taking turns on an annual basis, although the timing it's really a struggle to keep it timely, but we're doing the best we can. And now it's offered free as a digital download, and that's where we're at right now with the journal. So I'll leave it at that. And if you have more questions, just please ask, and I'll fill you in on more.
So maybe we'll have others who are at Tuning of the World add anything they have to add, and then we'll open the floor. Did you want to say anything, Sabine?
Just briefly, I want to go back to 1993 because this is the topic of our conversation here, and I just want to jump in or just let you know why did I join, because I was, of course, before I didn't know the people here. I knew Eric from some other background, so I was fascinated and thrilled by the idea that soundscape studies, or yes, the soundscape idea was reconfiguring and reconceptualizing the concept of sound and listening, and that was very, very important to me because at that time I was a young editor at the ARD, the public radio system in Germany, and I wanted to change things in the program, and I partially was not unsuccessful, let me say like this. So, and that was interesting to me that I found like-minded people there who were also into listening and about this reconceptualization, reconfiguration of art, sound art, music, and listening as an art, listening as a kind of aesthetic activity. That's what was important to me here.
And I would just second that and say that at the time, what I found extraordinary about the World Forum was how much interdisciplinarity there was. In 1993, it was, relatively unheard of. And so that was the thing that became the most appealing thing to me, the idea of crossing fields and working with scientists and so on. I get a lot out of Soundscape magazine every time, the journal, every time it comes out. I'm curious how many of you receive it or read it. Can I see some hands? It's a great teaching resource. I would recommend it to you, and they're all available for you online. They're really nice. When I try to explain what acoustic ecology is to people, the interdisciplinary idea works well now, but I do have the question, I keep getting the question, so it's about stopping noise and so, yeah, maybe that is something to look at.
Now and later. Do you have anything to add, Peter?
I can. Yeah. I was very young. I was a lecturer at the Academy of Media Arts, so completely different world. Because you have to imagine in the 90s, we started just with virtual studios and 3D modeling, supercomputers, silicon graphics things. So it was really a different world. And I remember Banff, impressed me very much. It's a very, very nice place. And actually, this Banff Center is more or less a media center. So actually, this conference was not really fitting in the program. They have super nice studios. And what I remember in Banff is what impressed me super much was they have a Christmas store which is open all the year. It's very funny. No, no. What is really since then? With the workshops of Murray Schaeffer, with the workshops of Pauline Oliveros, with the workshops of a lot of other people, concerts, I had probably three things to say. I was impressed that how the amount of artists and composers are there. I would say probably 50% of the people there. Not so much engineers, researchers, and architects. Probably this is a problem still now to get this subject in this architecture and so more. So on. The other thing is this focusing on listening. I'm doing sound art since probably 25 years or even longer now, 28 years, and for me, it changed completely. What am I doing? I'm doing producing sound, and this is the thing. I'm sending sound, or I'm coming from the other side and from the listening. And this has influenced me very much, and I think a lot of us. I remember Sabine was organizing in Akademie der Künste, Klangumwelten, 1995, very nice exhibition. I was very happy to be there. And then the Japanese lady, not Keiko, she was there, and I did a thing, funny enough, with gravel, with pebbles. And she came, and nobody else did it. She went down and made this. Said, "Oh, this is very nice. The sound of this is, I never heard the sound like this." And it was so impressive how deep listening you really can do. And this is, I think, a huge effect of the forum in the arts, especially.
Well, the only thing I would add is that acoustic ecology and sound studies are a very good trampoline for other types of work. So, for instance, when I left active work in '98 after the Stockholm event, I took a job at the Canada Council, and I ran an interdisciplinary art program. But it was always nurtured by the acoustic ecology training I had had, and the work of Schaeffer and the philosophy. So we often expand out of one discipline and touch others. And in this field, especially the last 2 days, have been extremely stimulating. New ideas, new connections. And so I just tweeted earlier today that I think this movement is deeper and much wider than it was 25 years ago. I think better. And of course there's room to grow, and tomorrow we'll look at structures. You know, the national structure is a practical way to do it, because people live, it's linguistic, it's structures, but it's not the only way to work. It could be that there's lighter structures. It could be that younger people want to do things differently, and that would be fine. But I think it's a good moment to look at the practice as it is now, and we have a really good cross-section. There's many people who would have liked to be in here who are not, and so they're not all voices. But if you look at the cross-section, it's pretty broad. So where do we go from here? celebrating the 25 years. And I really appreciate the notion of celebration, because we don't give ourselves that opportunity to have fun, you know, and say, hey, we're still here and it was pretty good. And those of you in 25 years might say, well, you know, I was in Dieburg in 2018, and it was pretty important for my life. Why? Because I met this person, or I had a long conversation about an issue. I didn't even know that there was somebody who had the same thought as me. So I would like, as your facilitator, we have a half hour left, just to open the floor. If you have questions for us, if there are things you'd like to know more about, you know, Eric, how does this work, or Hildy, what happened then, or something like that, and or thoughts on what the World Forum could do, and especially for those who aren't here tomorrow, it's a nice opportunity to have your thoughts on how you think the organization can evolve. Certainly the fact that social media is much more present today is an opportunity, but in-person gatherings are always valuable. Maybe they need to be multiplied across the country, around the world, but then once in a while, we all need to get together. Those who are leaders in the field need to get together, get to know each other. Because one of the reasons that it worked is that, you know, I like Hildy and she works me, and we work well together. And if we have a fight, you know, we talk about it. And that's the way the world works, is if people can cross boundaries and through affinity and friendship build something that's worthwhile. So, on that note, I also want to say, by the way, those speaking not their first language, I want to thank you for that. I'm an English speaker, but many of you are speaking, you know, second or third language, and I know it's difficult. So I want to say I really appreciate that. That I know that it's a practical thing to speak one language, but I know it's a burden for some of you. So thank you for that. Does anybody want to speak, comment? Yes, and when you speak, just please identify yourself. And keep it to maybe 1 or 2 minutes per intervention. Thank you.
I'm Mine. I just want to give a general feedback because it's my first experience of the WFAE. And my impression, I want to thank you for the opportunity for inviting me because the number of disciplines and genres involved and perspectives involved is really enlightening and really helpful, and also the opportunity to present myself, as I understand myself, as kind of a combination of researching and doing arts, and combining these two together, and also to say I'm kind of really early on in my work. I'm right now finishing my thesis, so I am at a point where I kind of starting, or I'm still at my starting point. So this is a good opportunity for me to get new inputs and to get new contacts, but this leads me also to a not harsh but also point of critique. Not to make it personal, but it's also the factor of when I was invited, I was really happy, but also it hit me financially quite a bit. I'm trying to make money out of what I am doing, but I'm not at a point where it pays my my bills. So paying for the conference, for the production of the work I did for here, and the accommodation and the transportation and so on, it adds up to around 500 euros, and this is not a minor account. So I know this from the perspective of booking artists and so on for my own, but it's also a factor to have in mind when kind of supporting younger artists and researchers.
It's a very good point, and I'm not one of the organizers, so I can't address that, but certainly the cost of travel and these events you have to have, and this event is well organized. There's a lot of volunteers and very good quality, but I hear you on that. It's something that we always have to keep in mind whenever we organize any event is how can we facilitate those who want and need to come to make it in one way or another. Any other thoughts, questions?
Well, a practical thing.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah. Thinking back to the Banff conference, I was 35 years old, but I felt like I was still in my early stage of my career, even at that age. Thank you. I haven't aged a bit. But I remember, well, two important things. I didn't know anything about acoustic ecology yet, but I heard about this conference happening in Banff from Sabina. So I'm always thankful for her to saying, "Hey, are you coming? And come to what? What is?" Anyways, and then I applied, but there was funding based on needs. So there was a sliding scale for the fees involved with conference registration. So for the future, this is something to think about, and also establishing maybe foundations or something. So if the WFAE could be facilitate that in some way, I don't know really how it could, but discounts for members is one way to do that, and or if institutions, usually these conferences are locally, like this one, locally organized, and it's the institution of this university that really has the infrastructure to have it and so on. But maybe there's ways to support those in financial need and have some kind of system in place for that. That's all.
No, let's open.
Sorry, I'd like to move on.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else want to speak? Questions, comments on the World Forum? Yes?
Take the microphone.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you.
Johannes Sistermann's my name. I have 3 things to mention. Tomorrow I won't be here, unfortunately. For the future, 3 ideas. Go site-specific, open the floor to different professional areas, and the third is, let me just think about, may come back. Means go site-specific means wherever one goes, you get the results where you are. Being in the campus area, you get the results of a campus area and those who come there. If you change places, you get different people attracted and you get different... Yes, sorry, yes. Site-specific is the first topic. The second one is open the floor to other professions, invite others. I come back to this keyword. And the third one, I may come back to it. Site-specific means go to places where you talk about. Means go in nature. The next conference could be in an airport. Go into town. Go to places where everybody talks about, so that one can leave the moment of talking about something, go into something. And then you have the possibility to dance the tango of going into something, what's there, the surrounding, or to just go in a distance and to reflect and to recognize what's there. So why not sitting inside, let's say Dieburg, inside an empty shop, for instance, and do this conference there? Or do this elsewhere, those which are not rented. I don't want to problematize this now, but simply to give an idea, results are caused by the location one has chosen. So change the location and you may find, I don't know it, you may find different solutions. Second thing is, actually I'm missing those who are in the field of the urban city planners. Where are the architectures? Where are the architectures? So there's a huge thing running because I'm a lecturer at the ETH in Zurich, and I'm not teaching in the class of art or in sound. I'm in the department of architecture. And there's a huge movement there, a huge interest, because they are in the middle of becoming aware what they are creating in town in terms of the facades of their buildings, for instance, and sounds bouncing back and resonance in cities, what they are creating. Most of them, they do not know what they are creating. They just go with the material or what's visually functioning for them. So, okay, those areas, why not going in those areas and have them here as lecturer, as experts invited. Third part is the tools. Since you do still you have developed tools in these acoustic ecology. Means one tool is your ear, our ears. The other tool has come slowly into this area. These are loudspeakers. I'm missing, or I would like to have this represented to question the tools. It's taken for granted, and there is a self-understanding, and I haven't heard any questioning of the function of a loudspeaker here. It's taken, but it's very critical dimension, a loudspeaker. A loudspeaker is what mediates continuously the sound, and listening directly with your ears as a tool. I don't know how to question the ears, but let's say don't take it for granted, and when you want to develop elsewhere, take it, question. So then you maybe find ways to, and just to decouple things from one another, and this opens gates,
right,
and step into the gates.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you for that. There's no problem critiquing the event, but it's also about it's good to know what areas you feel are gaps, because that could be that they're in such a broad field, there's not everyone here. But how could we do things differently going forward, not just in terms of conferences, but other ways of exchanging information? Because part of the problem that I've noticed is isolation. If you're working in a country and you're one of the only experts in the field, you don't know that there are others, and you don't even, there are language barriers, there's financial barriers, and some. So how can we overcome some of them? Does anybody else want to speak? Okay. And just identify yourself.
Thank you.
So people.
What did you say? My name?
Yeah, just remember.
Barntulu. I'm urban planner. How can I say? I mean, thank you for addressing the gap. I guess it's not. As far as I know, there are a lot of architects, urban researchers working on that. But I guess for me, it was also the one of the things we are kind of putting ourselves a little bit away from the organization, because there are like strict concepts of acoustic ecology and the soundscape, and maybe this other researchers not really sharing the same terminology with you, and think that it's changing and evolving, and maybe as the tools, maybe there are other tools or that everybody can use, or we can still keep that tools, for example, a sound walk, but adding more contemporary questions about society, class problems, and all of the questions, especially while we are in Germany, racism and all of the things. I didn't hear there was just one question about racism, and it didn't came out. And soundscape, acoustic ecology doesn't have to do with that. So this is, I mean, if there is no relation, you can't expect from the architects or social researchers, social scientists come and talk to you, because they talk totally different topics. This I wanted to add. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think Hildy wanted to respond, and then.
I would like, unless Milena, you want to speak to that, or are you something else? No, I just would like to speak to that, because there has been. This story is a very old story, that we haven't included this or we haven't included that, or that acoustic ecology is limited to this or that. I don't know where those ideas come from. From my perspective, soundscape studies and acoustic ecology has always been absolutely open to examining whoever is involved and whoever is active will, from that perspective of specialty in the profession, include the ideas of acoustic ecology, of listening, in their profession, and they will create that within their field of study, within their country, and they will continue with energy. That has been always our desire from day one on in the World Soundscape Project, There has been no authority that has said acoustic ecology is that. I don't know of that authority. What I would like to say at this point is, let's take the freedom to continue with energy and inspiration to keep on getting to know acoustic ecology and listening, getting to know that process, and expand into the professions, into the world of sound. That is not happening if we criticize limitations. We have huge limitations because we are volunteers. We are all limited in terms of what we can do. This huge spectrum of acoustic ecology and soundscape studies cannot be done by one person or by one group. We are a community that is working together to understand better how we can create a world that is mindful of the tasks that need to be done in the soundscape. And I think the future we're looking at has to look at that energy that we all have to provide in order to be able to work in this field.
Understood. Elena? And then who else wanted to be in line? Yeah. There was Monsieur 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. You'll be next.
Well, Hildy, you answered my question that I was going to ask somewhat, but I'm still going to ask it. And it is a little bit inspired by, Banu's comment, and for me, it's a question for you, the people who have been in the field for a while. And in a very personal way, part of me is so excited about the diversity that I see of topics and new topics coming in, and topics of gender, of race, of class, of marginalization. And I realize that in itself even, those topics are dealt with in many different areas, but even those in itself are not the only possible areas. The other people are seeing gaps in architecture and urban studies and so on. And so, in some ways, we have an incredible amount of granularity now. So where is the core? Is there a core? And what happens to the core of what acoustic ecology is? Does that render it almost in a way useless or irrelevant? Or does it become canonic? Like there's a canon, how... And I'd love to hear from each of you what your thoughts are on this.
But I won't allow it. Because we have 9 minutes left, and that's a big debate. And I think it's more useful at this point to hear from the room. You can... You could respond, maybe, but I think I want to get through some of the speakers list and get some voices. And maybe we will tomorrow, or... Not now, but it's a good question. It's been documented. Hello, everyone. All right, Michael, go ahead.
Hi. I'm Michael, based in the UK. I'll try and be quite quick. So I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so this may come up tomorrow, but I'll miss it. So I just wanted to know, going back to Claude's point from earlier about kind of isolation, people in different countries that find it difficult to, travel abroad. If there's like I don't really know what the social media situation is like, because I'm quite new to all of this, but is there like a platform that's like quick and easy? Like I know a load of people in my city that do a lot of relevant projects, and if there's somewhere they can just straight away post and kind of share their projects that they're working on, and then everyone here can kind of see it.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Who is next? I have a line up here, so try to keep it to 1 or 2 minutes each.
So I just want to respond to that, and do we have a Google group or a Yahoo group that is for WFAE?
Yeah, there's a listserv.
There is a listserv.
At sfu.ca.
Oh.
It's a traditional email listserv.
Is that in the program?
It's been around for...
But is that in this program? Is that in the conference papers?
I am not sure.
Okay.
But I think
so
that there
it's
might
something
be
that
something
everybody
we want
needs
to add.
to know.
Yeah. Plus, you
Because-
can visit the World Forum website and get all that information.
So everything
WFAE.net.
So everything that we're talking about and sharing information, we can do that through this listserv, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so that's number one. The second thing I was going to say is that Eric and I have been talking about reviving the New York chapter, which has seemed to tank, except I'm thinking maybe it should be a Mid-Atlantic chapter, but I think that more people have to volunteer to help all of these volunteers in order to go forward, because I know I have lots of New School students and Vermont graduate students who are deeply involved in sound studies and would love to have a forum to go to and talk to people. And my third thing is that I think it would be a great idea if you put a survey together for all of us based on all of these things that we're talking about, and that everybody could respond, and you can crunch the data, and it will tell you a lot as to how we're going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That's all I have to say.
Oh, that's good. So I think you're next, and then I have Robin and Monsieur, and who else? We're good?
Thank you. So again, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so I know you'll be talking about ways forward. And it's just a few things that have come to mind today in listening to the talks. One of the things was about isolation again, and the fact that, you know, I think there's a lot, well, being here this week has sort of shown there's so much shared synergies here and shared ideas and things that, you know, it's been really interesting to see some of the projects that people are doing. And it's been interesting talking about collaborative opportunities and how that can really expand and expose the practice, particularly arts and science, and certainly urban planning and architecture. And I think there's certainly, I mean, I always have these ideas, and I'm sure there's lots of people who have some great ideas for developing projects, but it's getting the backing to get them started. And maybe the forum could offer, I know there's obviously a huge capacity issue, and everybody's voluntary, but just offering something like a network for mentors, for example, for people that have done something over in the States, so it can support somebody else doing something, just being able to use that shared experience a little bit, or just having the forum being able to endorse a project. So if you're applying for funding, and you know, it may be just a letter that says we support this, and then the logo could go on it, which would help to build awareness of the forum as well, but also just help to levitate the project in people's minds. So just things like that, small and hopefully not too onerous, that could help.
Okay, I also won't be here tomorrow, unfortunately, past noon anyway. I guess I missed the original Banff 1993 thing somehow. I'm not sure how. I was very ill for a couple of years. That might have been a reason. But I've been at a few of these, and this is like, they're always very exciting. And there's a lot of diversity that's been expressed at this particular conference so far, and more to come, I'm sure. And I mean, my own paper is highly critical of some of the foundational ideas of acoustic ecology. I mean, it was accepted. I came. I get to say my piece. I don't think anyone is excluded, or there's any sort of... I understand how this feeling comes about, however. But I guess, okay, a cliche. Be the change that you want to see. So especially in this world we live in right now, there are so many different avenues. A listserv, that term won't even mean anything to half the room. But there are many other ways of organizing. You can organize in your own community of interest, whether that's geographical or not, and be another chapter in the WFAE. And that's how that's how you make change happen. Because a limited number of volunteers, can only do a limited number of things from their limited perspective, as I know, being a limited volunteer myself on other committees. So I guess I'd just like to say that I understand some of the sort of critical points. I see advancement has been already made in those this year, like at this conference, compared to perhaps previous years that I've been at. And I think more can come, and it's only going to happen if a lot of people put in that energy and effort and do it. And it will be accepted. There'll be a space for it.
Thank you.
I'm optimistic.
Is it you? Yes. No?
Hello, I'm Goran from Hamburg. Just two short things. YouTube is an awesome platform that is very useful nowadays, with all kind of content and people who have millions of followers. So if somebody would endorse or mention the stuff, it would spread quite quickly. Online courses are also gaining a lot of popularity. I'm coordinator at Hamburg Open Online University at our school, so we are also dealing with this stuff. So it's just new ways to spread the word out.
We are currently filming, as you might have seen, and we will put, when it's edited, we will put, because we've got from people permission here to be filmed, we will put that on YouTube and make it publicly available. So there will be a huge channel for that.
2 million followers.
At least.
We're almost done. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? There's a couple more minutes. Any other thoughts to share? Have we fait le tour de table? Yes?
I also agree with the ideas which already popped up about isolation. In my own research work, I also am quite amazed about how many composers, in my case, I get to know, which are all active in the field of on-site performances and on-site composition. I think there's between something like 20 and 50 composers active that I know now in Europe and the United States doing this kind of thing, but a large part of these people don't know each other. So, and I also started thinking about how can I reconnect those people again, and I have some simple websites, and I take interviews, and I send the information to each other. But it would be a good idea to combine this with a bigger organization. I think it would have more effect. And then a second thought, which is just a simple thought about one of the fundamental ideas, I think. It's about the importance of listening. I do get the feeling that I think it's already like a half a century, 50 years that this listening has become this core activity, and the whole idea of listening as central to music. It has been very important and crucial in changing, I think our Western culture, which has such a focus on music performance. But I also think that we should go a step further. I think it's about listening and sounding, both of them together. They are always connected, and so it's also looking at activities and other kind of awareness, which is, I think, also in a way political and social. It's making people aware that they are always sound producers, and that sound is in more than other sensorial activities is always shared and is kind of commons. If you know that term, in the way that like Ivan Illich and then later on, other people talked about sound as a commons which is shared and which all people are responsible, not only because they hear and listen those sounds, because the sound may have some effect, bad or good or whatever effect on people, but also because they are always also producers. They are also making sound.
Yeah, it's just a very short thing, but I thought instead of asking what is acoustic ecology, maybe better to ask what is the potential of acoustic ecology, because this has a dynamic, and this is very open to everything and not fixed in this what is it. It's, we never will know what is it.
You could have both discourses at once. So it is 6:01, and we need to get to the church on time, so to speak. So I'll just a little cliche. Nothing wrong with the cliche, right? So you have 1 minute, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yes. So Min is back again. I just wanted to say, when I was traveling to Banford this time, I really had no money. I don't know how I did it. I really can't remember how I did it. But first, it was a conference which was paid. And I was completely in Europe. You don't know this. Yeah. And I have to say, but the quality of this, everybody is there, is interested, and is doing something. So I now can evaluate this. And I have to say, for me, it paid back. I think it paid back, intellectually and even professionally. And if you do something like an opening of funding, support people, the first 500 euros from me.
All right. Giving back.
Yeah.
Do I hear 1,000? Thank you very much for your attention, your participation. Those who are going back home, bon voyage. Thank you for participating. Let's keep in touch electronically, in person. If you come to Canada, call us. Always happy to host and to help you connect up. You know, thank you very much. Thank you again. And we can never thank the volunteers and the organizers of Global Composition enough. Let's thank them right now.